The Black Mirror. Every evening, when the fire crackled in the fireplace, Grandma Margaret would sit beside Jason, her warm voice telling him stories of wandering spirits. The firelight flickered across their faces, casting strange shadows on the walls. In that cozy space, the scent of burning wood mixed with the sorrowful memories Grandma had accumulated over the years. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about a very special mirror, Grandma Margaret began, her eyes flashing with seriousness. This mirror is unlike any other. It carries a terrible secret, a spirit that can't rest. Jason felt the suspense in her words. He sat up straight, ears tuned to every syllable. Grandma Margaret continued. The Black Mirror, found in an abandoned house, once belonged to a young girl. They say that whenever someone looks into it, they see her reflection, but not as she truly was. Instead, her face is distorted, as if crying for help from another world. Jason shuddered, and the fire in the hearth seemed to flare more fiercely. He wondered what had happened to the girl, and why the mirror haunted anyone who looked into it. Grandma Margaret saw the fear in his eyes but smiled faintly, as though holding back a bigger secret. "You'll understand soon," she whispered. "But first, we need to know about the spirit of that mirror." As the wind howled outside, strange sounds seemed to echo in the air, mingling with the mysterious tale Grandma Margaret was weaving. Jason felt a powerful pull, as if the mirror was calling to him, and he knew that this eerie adventure was only just beginning. Grandma Margaret continued the story, her voice now lowered as if afraid of disturbing the spirits lurking around them. They say the Black Mirror was crafted from a strange kind of glass, capable of reflecting not just images, but the deepest fears of the human heart. A young girl named Clara once found it in a dusty old antique shop. Drawn to its mysterious beauty, she decided to buy it, not knowing her life would never be the same. Jason listened intently, the pieces of the story slowly coming together in his mind. Grandma Margaret went on. Clara lived with her family in a house near a dark forest, a place filled with tales of lost souls. On the first day she gazed into the mirror, something felt off. What she saw wasn't her own reflection, but a young girl with deep, hollow eyes and a ghostly pale face. The girl would always stare at Clara, as if trying to say something. But the more Clara looked into the mirror, the more lost and terrified she felt. She began having long, unsettling dreams, where the girl with the haunting eyes would appear, draining her of life. Each time Clara woke up, she felt weaker, as if something was slowly stealing her energy. Grandma Margaret paused, her eyes distant, as though reliving the events herself. One night, as Clara lay sleeping, she heard a soft whisper coming from the mirror. "Clara, Clara," the voice echoed around her. Terrified, she looked around, but saw no one. When she picked up the mirror, Clara saw the girl again, her body drenched in blood. Then, Clara realized with horror, the girl's face was identical to her own. Suddenly, Clara found herself reliving a moment from her childhood. Sitting in the back seat of her parents' car as they drove along a steep mountain road. From the cliff's edge, the ground seemed to drop into an endless abyss. Her father's hands frantically hit the brakes, but the car's momentum carried them forward. In an instant, they plummeted over the edge. Clara's body was flung violently into a thicket of trees. She felt the sharp sting of broken bones, her limbs unresponsive. Blood poured from her wounds as silent tears mixed with it. Clara could barely breathe before everything went dark. Jason's heart sank as he heard the tragic story. "Did Clara survive, Grandma?" he asked, his voice trembling. At that moment, Clara awoke from the nightmare, shaken but realizing it had been nothing more than a terrible dream. The next morning, Clara woke with a heavy feeling in her chest. The black mirror she had brought home from the antique shop haunted her thoughts. Each time she looked at it, she sensed something lurking within, as if it were watching her. The feeling grew so strong that Clara decided she would get rid of it. But as she stood at the door, mirror in hand, a strange sensation held her back. She couldn't bring herself to do it. The mirror seemed to have become a part of her, tethering her with invisible strings she could not break. That night, Clara dreamt again. In the dream, she found herself sitting before the mirror. But this time, something was different. Her reflection didn't appear. Instead, the mirror showed only a vast, empty void. Panic washed over her as she looked around, but there was no trace of her own image. Her face went pale, heart pounding in her chest. She tried to hurl the mirror away, but it remained empty, lifeless. In the throes of this nightmare, Clara felt as if she had been pulled into the world inside the mirror. A world where she didn't belong and from which there was no escape. Suddenly, everything around Clara shifted. She was no longer in her familiar home. Before her stood an enormous stone building, its damp gray walls towering around her. The space seemed impossibly vast, stretching out forever. Above her, the ceiling disappeared into darkness, broken only by dim beams of light slipping through cracks. Clara started to run, her feet pounding on the cold stone floor. She ran and ran, but no matter how fast she went, she couldn't reach the walls enclosing her. The space was infinite, and with each step her fear swelled. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice echoing in the emptiness. Her heart raced faster, the realization that she was trapped in this endless maze sinking in. Everything felt like it was collapsing around her. Clara fell to her knees, her body shaking, tears streaming onto the cold ground. She sobbed, overwhelmed by the crushing despair of being imprisoned forever in this endless stone labyrinth. There was no sound, no escape, only the suffocating grip of solitude. Clara tried to take a deep breath to calm herself. The thought of being drawn into the mirror, trapping her soul forever in that massive stone building, made her unable to hold back her tears. Each tear trickled down her cheek, icy cold. She realized she was standing before a bleak prospect with no way out, as if fate had locked her into that dark, damp space. Then, a strange phenomenon suddenly occurred. From the endless height of the building, a small beam of light pierced through, shining brilliantly. Clara felt her body becoming weightless, as if the light were pulling her in. She was lifted off the ground, floating in midair, her form growing translucent as if she were about to vanish into the surrounding space. Everything faded. The light became blurry. Clara opened her eyes, gasping for breath. She was jolted to realize she was still lying in bed, in her familiar room. The mirror was still there, standing still on the table in the corner, unmoving. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. Was it just a dream? She wondered, half awake, half asleep. All the sensations felt too real, as if she had just lived through a nightmare, and now, even though she had awakened, its haunting presence still lingered. Clara squinted at the mirror once more, a sense of unease swelling in her chest. As time passed, Clara's parents began to notice the unusual change in their daughter. Clara's gaze had become vacant and lifeless. Over the past few days, she was no longer the cheerful, active girl she once was. Fatigue was evident on her face. Her eyes were dull, lacking vitality. The wrinkles on her forehead signaled a heavy, gloomy mood. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, her mother gently asked, "Sweetheart, what's going on? Why do you look so tired?" Clara's father also chimed in, his voice warm and gentle. "Clara, if you have anything to share, please tell us. We're always here for you." But Clara said nothing. She simply bowed her head, avoiding their gaze. She no longer wanted to share with her parents, as if something inside her was slowly being drained away. Clara stopped hanging out with her friends. She just stayed locked in her room, growing increasingly distant from the outside world. All day long, she often sat in front of the mirror, staring at it as if entranced. Her parents, coming home late from work each day, still tried to show concern, asking about her well-being, but only received silence in return. Clara just wanted to escape everything, to shut the door of her room tightly and drown in her own darkness. One night, Clara once again sank into an enchanting dream. In this dream, she saw a little girl with long, shimmering hair emerging from the mirror. The girl smiled and took Clara's hand, leading her out of the dark room. They both stepped into a vast garden, filled with vibrant flowers of extraordinary colors. The fresh air was cool, brushing against each strand of her hair. Clara felt happiness like never before. The sadness and anxiety in her heart seemed to dissolve completely. She laughed and danced alongside the little girl, as if everything in life were truly perfect. The girl held Clara's hand and gently said, "This is heaven, our world." Clara gazed around in awe, marveling at the strange plants, the sky sparkling with ethereal clouds beneath their feet. It felt as though she and the girl were walking on the sky, in a place entirely separate from reality. Clara continued to follow, each step pulling her into a different world, beautiful, yet strange and untouchable. The girl still held Clara's hand tightly, leading her across soft, lush grass and through vibrant green forests. The surroundings sparkled under the soft golden light, as if the entire garden was bathed in the gentle rays of dawn. Clara had never felt anything so alive. The fragrance of the unusual flowers was astonishing, a soft scent she had never experienced in the outside world. The girl remained silent, guiding Clara, her eyes sparkling with an understanding Clara couldn't comprehend. They stopped before a crystal-clear stream, the water flowing gently, its sound like a soothing melody. The surface shimmered, reflecting the deep blue sky with fluffy white clouds drifting lazily. The girl turned to Clara, smiling gently. "This is the paradise stream. Before we can enter the gates of heaven, you need to cleanse yourself here." Clara looked at the water, marveling at its pure beauty. The surface was as clear as crystal, revealing every small stone beneath the stream and tiny fish swimming leisurely below. The girl gently placed her feet into the stream, the water only reaching her knees, but the coolness spread throughout her body. She turned back to signal Clara to join her. Initially hesitant, Clara felt drawn to the environment around her, sensing safety and tranquility. She slowly stepped into the stream, the water touching her skin, cold yet soothing. Each time the water brushed against her, Clara felt as if the burdens in her heart were washed away. The weariness and pain of her real life seemed to dissolve into the water. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to sink into this pure sensation. The girl continued, "Only when both your body and soul are clean can you enter the other world, where there is no pain or sorrow." Clara couldn't remember how long she stood there. She only knew that when she opened her eyes, she felt lighter than ever. The girl took Clara's hand again, leading her onward. Before them stood a large gate, made of ethereal light. Faint images of another world flickered behind the gate, but Clara could not see clearly. Her heart began to race, as if something awaited her on the other side. A secret she dared not confront. "Can we go in there?" Clara asked softly, uncertain. The girl simply smiled, then quietly led Clara closer, preparing to step through the gate. Clara held the little girl's hand tightly as they stepped through the shimmering gate. The moment they crossed the threshold, the space behind the gate burst into brilliant light. Everything that appeared before Clara was more magical than anything she could have imagined. A magnificent castle rose majestically against the deep blue sky, surrounded by fluffy white clouds that enveloped everything. The trees were vibrant green, and the flowers bloomed in colors unseen in the real world. A gentle stream flowed, reflecting the soft rays of the sun. Both of them moved forward, their feet light as if gliding over the ground. The little girl turned back, beaming with happiness. "We've arrived, Clara. This is our heaven." Clara looked around, feeling as if her heart had become weightless. She no longer felt pain, exhaustion, or heaviness, only absolute serenity remained. The grand buildings and the staircase made of jade led to a higher place, where the light shone brighter than ever. Clara knew she had entered another world, one from which she would never return to her previous life. It was a feeling both strange and peaceful. The little girl still held Clara's hand, guiding her up the staircase deeper into the eternal realm. Ahead lay a blinding light, filled with wonder, incomparable to anything Clara had ever experienced. As she ascended, she felt herself gradually transforming, merging with the rays of light, her soul gently drifting away from the old world. They vanished into the clouds, leaving no trace behind. Clara had forever stepped into another world, one where no one could ever find her again. As Clara never awoke from her final dream, the room fell into a chilling silence. Her parents had continuously called out, never losing hope, but ultimately they were left with only grief and loss. Clara had departed for good without explanation, leaving behind only the eerie black mirror. The mirror stood there silently, like a soulless witness to what had happened. The room Clara once occupied became colder and darker than ever, as if all life had been drained away along with the girl's soul. In the village, the story of the Black Mirror spread everywhere. People began to whisper about eerie tales, that the mirror was not just an inanimate object. They believed it always sought out weak, vulnerable souls, and once it had targeted someone, that person would never return. Though no one truly understood what had happened to Clara, people began to view the mirror as a symbol of a curse. Rumors spread quickly. That mirror took Clara, just as it had taken other souls before her. No one dared to approach it anymore, fearing they would become the next victim. Clara's parents, though heartbroken, could do nothing but live in the haunting memories of their daughter. The house became a place filled with darkness and sorrowful memories, where Clara's absence always lingered despite the passing years. Jason quietly watched Mrs. Margaret, his eyes filled with curiosity and some anxiety. He asked, "So that mirror? Does it still exist, ma'am? Has anyone found it?" Mrs. Margaret sighed, her eyes gazing far away as if returning to the past. She spoke slowly, her voice hoarse and lowered like a warning. "That mirror is still out there, Jason. But I don't know where it is. It vanished long ago after Clara's family left. Everything related to it seems to have faded away, as if it wanted to hide itself. But I know one thing. The journey of the mirror has never stopped." Jason looked at her in astonishment. The story was becoming stranger and more mysterious. Mrs. Margaret continued, her voice almost a whisper. "That mirror will not stop until it finds new souls. Weak, fragile souls. It will seek them out somehow. It seems the mirror knows how to choose a new path every time an old story ends." Jason shivered. A cold breeze swept through, making him feel heavy and tense. That eerie mirror, with its mysterious power, was still out there somewhere, waiting to continue its journey. 40 Mini.